Hello, guys. Sorry for the slight delay we had today, but anyways, we made it. We're here. Thank you for joining us. And like I was promising you guys before, I have a special guest. Here is Sven Pape. Am I pronouncing it properly? Your last name?
It's a Papa.
Pape. Okay, Sven Pape, and he's a film editor and a very accomplished film editor. So maybe I'll just let you kind of introduce yourself so everybody knows, I guess, what you do.
Yes, thank you first of all for having me. I'm really excited about this. First
Oh,
time I'm live on YouTube, so this is pretty cool. Um, I'm a film editor based in Los Angeles. I'm originally from Germany. When I started, I went to the American Film Institute, studied there, and then I just stayed in LA. Um, did a lot of independent projects. One of them was a live webcast of an indie film in Pennsylvania.
looks like we lost Sven, so I'm just gonna try to reconnect with him. Hopefully we'll get him back soon, and just stay tuned, guys. Like I said, we're having that's the whole thing with doing a live show. You never know how it's gonna go. So let me just try to reconnect here with him. So yeah, I'm gonna get back to all your questions. I'm just right now trying to reach Sven. I think his connection may be timed out. So let's call him again. Um, in the meantime, let's see. Just trying to connect. Let me see what kind of who's joined us already. Let's see, we got 51 people. Um, so let's see. Any questions so far? And like I said, just submit any questions you guys have for Sven. Like I said he's a pro film editor, so you don't often get a chance like that. He's worked with some really high caliber people. So any questions you have, maybe with regards to how to get into the business or any like tips and tricks, things like that, then just like I said, just let me know. I think I'm getting Sven back here. Can you see me, or I can actually see you? So that's the most important. So hold on. We're just gonna put you back online here. All right. So we have Sven back. We had a little connection problem.
Sorry.
No, it's
Oh,
okay. It happens. That's the whole thing with doing a live show.
how much did you get from what I was saying?
We got. I think you're saying about you went to film school and then you decided to stay, I guess, in Los Angeles. Is that where you are right now?
That's where I am right now. Yes.
Okay, okay.
I went to the American Film Institute. I did a couple of independent projects. I helped other friends out. I ended up getting um, noticed because we did a webcast of an independent movie, which James Cameron's little brother saw, and
Oh,
I want to do something like that for Jim's next movie. Come meet us, tell us what the experience was. I did that. I ended up becoming the onboard documentarian for the Titanic expedition that he did, and ended up then becoming an editor on his 3D IMAX film. And that's how my career as editor started.
wow.
So
And how soon was it after your film school then? The
pretty much straight after, within a year. Like I just, one of the buddies that I had, he immediately followed up with a film that he directed, and he asked me if I actually wanted to produce it. And I said I wasn't really interested in producing, but I would be interested in doing a webcast. The film itself had to do with the internet, and I thought that'd be a cool idea to do. This was all before YouTube, before any of the streaming social media you have nowadays. So we sort of built our own little platform and got some attention. We were on a lot of news outlets. We were on CNN and some other big news outlets. We had Microsoft as a sponsor, and because of that, that little film had a lot of attention, and that led sort of to the next gig right after film school.
Oh wow. So I'm gonna tell you that I guess. Well, I mean, maybe I should ask you then. Do you think it was luck has a lot to do with I guess getting hired and getting actually progressing with as a filmmaker in the film industry?
Yes, but how do they say in baseball? Luck is when you prepare really hard to be ready for making the right hit. So I mean, yes, it is a lot of luck, but it's also just the fact that you're doing something
Mm-hmm.
and you're you may be doing something that is different, and that's how you by walking sort of that path less traveled on, you you then have opportunities that you may not have otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's luck, but it's also creating the opportunity for having luck.
Okay. Okay. Now, have you like since then? Has how has your career been going? Like, are you feel fortunate? I mean, have you been keeping busy? I guess most of the time, because I myself, I'm a film director. I edit my own projects. That's pretty much all that I've edited. Although I've had some of my projects edited by others, but I always wondered, like, as a film editor, how I guess how it works. Like, whether is it always because, like, for me, for example, I'll work on a film and then as a director I kind of spend sometimes 5-6 months even preparing for the next project, so you could say I kind of have a lot of downtime as a film editor. Is that the same kind of process?
You, for me, it actually, in a way, is a little bit. There's a lot of downtime. I really don't take that many jobs where I would jump from project to project. I usually take a job to pay the bills, and then I try to take time off to work on my own projects or to work on something that is personally challenging but may not pay the bills right away.
Okay.
So as an editor, you can definitely go from job to job, and if you're good and if you keep at it, you will get hired for sort of the level or the genre that you've made yourself a name with. Um, but I tend to um, I like to do stuff that's personally challenging. So sometimes it's not editing, sometimes it's something different. So I get I get sometimes distracted, and then I have to come back and just take another gig. And
Oh, okay.
then it maybe takes a little longer to find that next gig because you're sort of out of the loop.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Now, when you say you're doing your own projects, when you working on your own projects, would it be more as just over like a filmmaker? You write the script, develop, direct it.
Yeah, that's correct. I directed two films in the past. Um, I writing a script. I'm doing all kinds of things. This guy edits is like a personal challenge project where I just get excited about creating a YouTube channel and creating like finding a way how you can communicate with an audience is very exciting to me. Like anything that I can do to engage with an audience is something that is a challenge and
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Okay. Yeah, actually, by the way, I wanted to let everybody know that Sven, he's actually started. You started the channel when, like you said,
3 months ago.
3 months ago. So 3 months ago, Sven started his own YouTube channel. This guy edits. I provided the links in the description of this video, plus in the annotation, so you guys can click it. You can check it out, and I think it's like an amazing resource for like if you just want to learn, everything there is really about editing. And I think you can learn a lot more than by going to film school. Not that I'm anti-film school, but just because I find like even for me, whether it's a cinematographer, editor, or anything, I find that I tend myself, I tend to learn. I think the most on the actual job. Uh, and I remember my early jobs, it was kind of working as an assistant, you could say, to a lot of these positions. So you're kind of there watching over somebody's shoulder, and that's what I think you, Sven, allow people to do. Kind of let them join in and kind of watch you literally over your shoulder, because I know you have one camera that's like over your shoulder, shows your whole editing setup while you're editing your new film, right, with Mark Webber.
Yes. So I have to give credit first of all to Mark Webber because he's the director and the visionary behind the film. And so when this is the third time that I'm editing a film for Mark Webber, he's the first film we did went to Sundance, and then we continued on that relationship. And so when that new project came around, I asked him how we would feel about the idea of actually showing the process of editing on the internet and showing scenes that are work in progress and revealing stuff that usually as a filmmaker you will hold back until the movie premieres. And he was a little concerned, but he said, okay, why not? Let's give it a try. I mean, it's an independent film. We're looking for an audience. We're looking for all kinds of avenues how we can set ourselves apart. And so I started doing like 3 episodes that I just banged, and I showed it to him, and he just loved it. And he said, okay, great, just do whatever you think is right. And then from that point, I just went forward, and then I invited him to come on to the channel and start communicating with the audience as well. And they started asking him questions, and it sort of grew from there. So I have to say it's something that is unique in the sense that a director is opening up his film before he actually had a chance to really tell his story completely the way that he wanted to do it, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I gotta tell you that most of the directors or just even the producers, even when I'm directing myself, a lot of producers are very afraid of putting anything online before the film is done, before you get the distribution deal. So yeah. So I mean, I was kind of curious how you even managed to arrange that. So I guess it seems like it's all up to, or it was all thanks to Mark Webber. So we're starting to get questions here. So maybe I'll pass some questions here on to you. And what is the first one is from Ashton Dean, and the question is, what was it like working with James Cameron on Ghost of the Abyss?
It was very interesting. He sort of became like a involuntary mentor of mine because I had to stick a camera into his face while he was making his film. And you may or may not know that James Cameron is not the easiest filmmaker. He has a reputation of being very tough. And the first 2 weeks on boat, I thought he was going to throw me off the boat, because just like any other filmmaker, he wants to have control, and by allowing a camera that streams directly to the internet, he had to give up control. And luckily, his younger brother was like, "Dude, that's what you signed up for, and that's what we're doing." And um, I developed during that time a really thick skin, and luckily I never had it was never personal, so it was just like I felt frustrated that I wasn't maybe doing something that he wanted to do, or I wasn't doing it the right way, or I was in his way, but it never felt like I never felt personally attacked. So I had the opportunity to just develop a thick skin and just ignore it. And once I got through that, once I got past that, then it was just an amazing experience. And I mean, then actually in editing, he's actually a really supportive, great person. When there's time and there's no pressure, it's amazing to just watch him. It's amazing to hear his comments and get his support when I'm just cutting some stuff and he's seeing it, and he has all this vast talent and experience, and he's making sense out of something that I, as a film student, was putting together, where he already saw potential and was able to work with. So just all around an amazing experience.
Cool. Okay. All right. So we have another question here from VFX. What is it? VFX Icader. Some of these usernames are kind of hard to pronounce, but I think I'm pronouncing it okay. Anyways, it's just asking for the name of the school. I guess the film school, I guess, that you went to. Just they wanted to hear it
Yeah,
again.
it was the AFI, the American Film Institute here in Los Angeles.
Okay. Okay. Let's see another question here. Um, Sven, what is your main editing setup? What allows you to edit with fluidity and quality? This is again from Ashton Dean Gleckman. Gleckman? Yeah.
Um, well, I mean, I work with Avid. I work this feature. I'm actually working on Final Cut 10. Um, I actually started with DaVinci Resolve, which has a lot of potential. So I'm always on the channel. I'm always saying I don't really care that much passionately about what software I work with. I think they're all great tools and they have their strong points and their weaknesses. I do like working in Final Cut 10, even though it's the first time I'm doing it, but there is
Okay.
something really fast and fluid and intuitive about it that I haven't seen in some of the others in that way. They have their own way of editing. And then in terms of the actual setup, I basically have two monitors, then I have a viewing screen that is a HD screen, and then I have a custom built computer. I don't want to get too much into the details, but it's not something that you buy off the shelf. It's something that a friend of mine put together, and it's a pretty powerful machine to do 4K
Do
editing.
you do you mind letting me know maybe like how expensive would it be a setup like that, just roughly?
This system wasn't that expensive at all. It was
Oh, it
like
wasn't. Okay.
1,500
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
the computer, but if you would have had to buy it on the shelf, it would be a 10K system.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is you got a lot of favors.
You get the idea what kind of system it is.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
And
Okay.
it's smooth. It runs really nice.
Yeah. And now, can you when you edit, do you edit in 4K or is it primarily HD?
Right now I'm editing in HD in a proxy.
Okay.
Um, Eventually we'll go to 4K when we do the color correction, obviously.
Okay. Okay. No, oh, actually, by the way, do you do your own color correction?
I do not, but I work very closely with the co-producer on this film. His name is Dustin Hughes, and initially wanted to do the whole thing in DaVinci Resolve, and so first we built a 4K DaVinci Resolve system, but there were some just problems in the actual editing with the multicam, where I then said I'd rather. It was sort of started. It was not really helping me in the process in terms of it wasn't a fluid editing.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
and so then we decided, okay, let's go to Final Cut 10 because we know it works very well with DaVinci Resolve, and then we can round trip the project so that he can do the color correction and bring in
Okay.
the sound mix and all that stuff.
All right. Another question from Joshua Stokes Films. He's asking, how was James Cameron when directing his vision? His vision is I guess, is his vision the only vision, or did he let other people put their ideas forward?
That's a good question. He has a very strong vision, but he's very open as well. Um, Especially on that film because it was a documentary, so in a way it was kind of new for him as well. So there was a learning curve on his behalf as well, and he had a lot of people that had experience in documentary that he would allow into that process and advise him. One thing that he always says is, if you're the director, make sure you're in control. So even though he would allow creative dialogue, if for some reason it would go towards a way where he would lose control or where it seems like there's too many kitchen in the cooks, then he would immediately take charge.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he would never um, like he would always his game plan is he walk into a room no matter what the situation is, and he will make sure that he's in control of that room. And I mean that's as a director, I think that's totally the way you should do it. I mean, there are certain ways where you can still be a very, very like there doesn't have to be any stress or tension at the same way. Um, but I guess what I'm saying is he is somebody who's listening, but at the same time he's a very strong visionary as well.
Okay. Here we have another question here. Let me see. I had it marked. Oh yeah. So this is from Alex Fahal. Sven, did you do any editing or filmmaking prior to film school?
I did, yes. I actually, when I was in Germany, I played around with videos, and then I actually ended up moving to South Africa because of my parents and the job that they had. And there, it really started for me to to make sense to get into filmmaking, because I was in a different country, different culture, and I felt a little alone, and I saw myself going to the movies a lot, and that's when I really discovered my love for film and what it can do to you to see a good movie that's like emotionally just taking you and taking you somewhere. And I just wanted to be able to tell my stories. So in South Africa, as a teenager, I had a video camera. My dad had a really crappy computer, and I started editing there. And I did my first couple of little films before I went to film school.
Oh, okay. Cool. Actually, I think I find it that a lot of people start that way. I mean, a lot of people kind of first experiment before I guess they know really. Okay, this is what I want to do, because it's like it's hard to kind of sometimes make up your mind and decide. Okay, is this maybe a career I should pursue until you kind of dip your feet in a little bit in it. I have another question here from again from Ashton. He's saying, "Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. No need to apologize. It's good. I've been looking forward to this." And anyways, he's saying, "When you watch films in theaters, what is the process analyzing film edits? What's the most surprising thing you learned?"
I cannot sit in a theater and think about editing. If it's a good movie, I'm completely lost in the story. If it's a bad movie, I'm just bored. Um, so it's very hard for me to look at another film and start judging the editing. And I mean, there's a saying that editing is an invisible art, and if it's really fantastic editing, you can't tell because it's invisible. And so when I look at a movie, I'm thinking about emotions, character, and story, and not really how that was achieved through camera work or editing or anything like that. It just works or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. One more question here. What is the most extensive problem you ran into while editing a film or any other kind of visual media?
Um, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I guess at the beginning, maybe it would be just the lack of experience where you feel afraid to cut something and just try to tell a story. I think as you grow and get more experience and you put your hours in, you lose that fear of things will not work. Like I always like whatever it is, what the footage is or whatever. I just the the less fear you have, the easier it will be for you to do interesting work. And I guess at the beginning it was harder because you were more afraid, or I was more afraid. I guess think of something specific, like a specific example, something that's really hard.
Actually, I have a question for you. Then I have a few actually, but we'll get through all of them. One of my questions is like, do you like right now? Do you edit really anything outside of films? Like, have you done music videos, for example?
As a matter of fact, I'm actually cutting a commercial tomorrow for just one day.
Oh, okay.
So I get hired all the time to do short-term gigs, and I gladly take them. So I'm doing a commercial tomorrow. In middle of August, I'm actually going to Las Vegas to cut the Halloween special for Chris Angel. So I get to hang out with him for 2 weeks.
Cool.
I'm really excited about. So yes, I do a lot of different things. I do a lot of branded pieces now, which I find really, really interesting. I did something for Christian Louboutin, which you can see on my channel, and there's some other clients like Verizon and Budweiser and so on, that they all are looking for ways to create content and not just commercials, just interesting content that people would want to watch and share. And so it's interesting to work in that field as an editor, because there's a lot of experimentation going on.
So actually, yeah, maybe my next question then will be, like, are there any big differences then? Like, for example, editing, like you said, like the project that you have coming up with Chris Angel, or maybe a music video, when you compare it to like a traditional sort of a narrative film?
Yeah, I mean there are challenges with it. It all seems to be a little bit more documentary style, so they're all trying to create a situation where something happens, and then they just have a bunch of cameras everywhere to capture that. For example, with Budweiser, this whole campaign where they take somebody and they uh, whatever their dream is. Like I did a YouTube thing for them where they had a amateur comedian um, who was doing a stand up in a really tiny club, and they surprised him and said, "Okay, now take that. And we're gonna take you to the biggest stage in town, and we're gonna have you perform with the biggest comedian that is there." And that whole day, they followed him with cameras, and they took him everywhere. They got him a makeover. He went on a parade and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then he ended up on stage, and the thing
Wow.
ends with him doing his bit. So that's a 2 minute spot on YouTube, but there's so much footage and it takes weeks and weeks to edit it.
Do you like that kind of thing, editing?
I love it. I think it's
You
great.
do?
I mean,
Okay.
it's very, it's experimental, it's real people. Um, it can be engaging. Sometimes you have to, like, sometimes it gets a little staged, or you think something, a moment, you were anticipating a moment and it didn't happen, and then you have to create it somehow in the editing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like now that you're saying that you enjoy it, I've done, for example, some shoots before, like music videos. Basically, I worked on where I had to edit them after, and there were like, a lot of like performances, a lot of like you said, like just kind of almost documentary, kind of mockumentary kind of style. So much footage. I personally hated doing that because I guess I'm more of a filmmaker. Like I love editing my films because I know here's a script, here's a story, and I kind of only shoot what I need, and then I kind of know already how to put it together. Now, once I put it together, I always then go in and experiment and try new things. But when I have to start with, like what you're saying, like with like in that project that you were working on, where you have hours and hours of all this footage, and there's basically probably thousands of different ways that you could edit that, right?
Yep.
It's kind of, I don't know, for me it's kind of hard to just like get in there and be like, okay, well, this is the way I'm gonna do it, because I would always be thinking, well, but I could do it that way, I could do it this way, and it's just kind of, I don't know. For me, I personally, I'm just saying I hate it.
It might actually be harder for you because you're the actual filmmaker,
Hmm.
so everything matters to you, or like
That is
certain
true.
shots
Yeah.
matter specifically to you because you have so much pain and sweat and tears that you put into them. Being an editor, I don't really care about anything but the emotion, character, and story. So I always just have to compare one moment over the other and say, okay, which is the stronger moment? I only can show one of the five that I have. Which one is the strongest? And
Uh-huh.
then I'll pick. And so for me as the outside editor, it's much easier to make these hard choices pretty fast. And then it just comes with experience. Just being used to having vast amount of footage and just going through them and taking your time, picking the moments, not really deciding yet whether you're going to use them or not, just identifying the moments. And then once you have all the information, then there's usually just one or two choices you can really do. And then a different editor would make a different choice, but that's my choice, and that's the best choice that I can make. And that's the best foot that I will put forward. And then just see what the client says, or that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. It's a thing. I mean, I'll tell you that I also personally believe that it's a good idea to have somebody else edit than who's shot the whole film or definitely directed it, because like you said, you have no attachment. Doesn't you don't care whether you took 5 hours to do this really incredible shot. If it doesn't work, you just cut it out. Versus if you worked on it, you're gonna be less likely to do it. But having said that, then like when you work on your own projects, do you then hire somebody else to edit your
I
projects?
tried that, yes. Actually, my first film, I had a co-editor. His name's John Wolfois. He is actually the editor on Avatar, and or one of the editors. And I didn't like the process at all. I mean, he is so easygoing, and it was so so easy, so none of the blame goes to him. Um, but I just hated it. It just drove me nuts. Um, so
Did you end up being kind of like one of those over-the-shoulder editors where you want to almost like take the mouse and click?
he did the first cut, and then I did the second cut, and I
Oh, okay,
just
okay, that's how you do.
completely did my thing. And but he was totally cool with it. Um, so on the second feature I did, I decided to do it just completely myself. But I mean, I've grown, and I think on the next one, I would want to have a really strong editor on there, and I probably would hold back a lot more just to have that second point of view. It's really important because you do get lost as a filmmaker if you do everything.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there are some that can do that perfectly, Robert Rodriguez, um, but I feel like most of the time the director needs every help he can get. Collaboration is so important. And it can come from anybody. It can be a really collaborative DP who has a really strong sense of character and story that can help you. It can be an editor who has a very strong sense of um, conflict and drama, and he can help you. So I would encourage every filmmaker to be open to collaborating.
Yeah, I mean that's how I work, I guess. Is that I don't think I could ever. I've tried it and I didn't like having somebody else edit, like you said. But I do, I admit the fact that you need an outside, I guess, perspective. So somebody who hasn't been so closely involved. So basically, what I do in my films is I still edit them, but I do a lot of test screenings. I let other filmmakers or just anybody even just give me their honest opinion, and that's actually why I love YouTube. Is like when you put a work out there, or sometimes I do like little test screeners and I send them out to people. You really, I mean, especially somebody on the internet who doesn't know you, doesn't care if they're gonna hurt your feelings. They'll tell you straightforward, like this part's boring. Just it's too long. It's boring. Whatever. Or I didn't get it right. So definitely
Yep.
need to be open.
Yep.
I have another question here from this is from Speedster, and it says, "How do you decide what transition type to use in between scenes?"
Uh, are you thinking like dissolves versus fades versus hard cut?
I think so. Yeah.
It depends on the story. I try to keep it simple. Um, Inexperienced editors or editors, I would say a lot of people that get started, they try to get fancy with transitions. And I've learned over time that the less style you can apply on your work, the more focus you put on what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And a story that is told in the most simple way, but is truthful and authentic, will have a stronger impact than a story that is shoddy, but it is glamorous and stylistically top notch. The audience will see right through that, and then it will actually hurt you to do fancy transitions. So now, to get back to your question, maybe that's not what you mean. Um, I usually do hard cuts. Sometimes I do fade outs if I really want to take a breather, but very selectively.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, I just want the story to barrel through. I don't want the audience to catch their breath. So, in terms of transitions, I also tend to, for example, I have an episode on the channel where I talk about how do you get into and out of scenes. And one of the rules that I really think is a good one is to get into a scene late and to leave as early as possible. Meaning that don't get in there where usually a scene starts, where people walk into the room and they chit chat and they talk about anything but what the scene is about, just to get into the moment. I tend to cut all that out and I go straight to what the scene is about. And once I reach the climax of the scene, I try to get it out as soon as possible. Because what happens is if I don't do this beginning and traditional ending of a scene, um, I don't do that. I don't give the audience the opportunity to take a breather or make a mental check mark. They just go from oh, that just happened, oh this happened, that happened, and it has this what happens next effect where they don't really have a chance to take a breath and then sort of check out for a moment, because I want them to be present the whole time. And then I pick my moments where I really want to make make a point and say, okay, you just learned something, or we just experienced something, some amazing character growth, and let's take that in, let's take a breather, and let's reset. So that's sort of the big answer to that question, whether I use hard cuts or dissolves or fades.
Actually, yeah, so having now, they told me that, how do you feel then about films from, for example, filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, like especially like not all of his films, but like Kill Bill, where he takes very long time for a scene to slowly build in. He's like almost seems like he enters into that scene as early as he can, as opposed to as late as he can. How do you feel?
Everything but what the scene is about, or so it seems. It blows my mind, the genius behind Quentin Tarantino. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of filmmakers where I kind of understand how they do it. With Quentin Tarantino, I have no concept.
No
like
concept.
I just.
But you still enjoy it, you're saying, his films?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
amazed. I mean, it's unbelievable the way that he uses dialogue to talk about anything else but what the scene is about. But it's all about what the scene is about. I mean, they can have a conversation about a Big Mac, and it's all about the character and the relationship that they have.
Yeah.
And it's just the highest art that he just naturally has the talent for, or he worked on to be able to achieve that. So heads up.
Cool. Okay, we have another question here from Jen Ray Rodriguez. I think you kind of answered it, but maybe you can just quickly go over it. Do you have a different? Did you have a different job prior to filmmaking, and what made you decide that you really want this career?
Yeah, I was a newspaper boy, so I went around the neighborhood doing that. I no, I really just wanted to become a filmmaker straight up. When I went to high school in South Africa, my dad said, "This is something I'm going to do for you. I'm going to set up 3 internships with different companies." And he set one with his company. He's a car guy, so was in a car factory. And then he set me up there with their marketing department and then the advertising agency for the car company. And I did all that, and I loved it at the advertising agency. I went straight to the film department, and I just loved being on set shooting commercials. And I just knew that's what I want to do. And then everything I pursued at that point, every job, I started working as a journalist, doing TV, little features while I was studying in Germany. And then when I came to LA, I worked as a journalist doing like little news coverage about Hollywood stories for German TV, and sort of just worked within the business basically all the time.
All right. Well, here's another question actually about transitions, and this one's from Joshua Stokes Films. It says, Sven, how do you feel about the wipe transition in Star Wars? Tom, last stream you mentioned you found them cheesy. Yeah, actually, yeah. Maybe I'll quickly say too. I did find them. No, I find wipe transitions in general cheesy, but actually in the latest Star Wars, I don't know why, but I found they still worked. So maybe now you can tell me. Answer.
I agree. I think they're cheesy. They're horrible. Nobody should do them, but Star Wars.
Good answer. Here, let's see what other questions here we have. Another one from Ashton Dean Gleckman. How do you feel about the very limited amount of directors who enjoy to edit their films? I did happen to see that James Wan partly or mostly edited in Insidious.
I didn't understand the second part, but the question is, how do I feel about directors who edit their film? I think it's great.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. It
As
takes
long as long as you said you get the outside feedback, I guess, right?
Yeah. Um, No, I mean, I feel like I'm a filmmaker. When I do my films, I want to edit them. I'm gonna try not to. Um, we'll see what happens, but I totally respect editors. I totally respect directors who edit features themselves if they do a good job.
Welcome. Here's another question from Alex Fall. Have you ever worked with a difficult director or a director that was too involved in the editing process?
It happens. Less so with directors, more so with producers or clients. Sometimes they get really heavily involved where I feel like I'm just there to push a button, but I just immediately just switch my job description. I have no problem if you're paying my rate. I have no problem just pushing buttons on a keyboard, and I don't have to really get too involved in terms of the story. I'll tell you what I think, but if I feel like you don't need my opinion, I that's fine by me. That's You're paying me, so you decide how you want to use me.
It's not fun though. I remember I started my career as an animator and then doing effects and stuff. And I remember there was a director I worked with who like literally wanted to sometimes pick my mouse and like change the way the animation looked. And I remember after a while I didn't end up quitting, but I was very close to quitting because it just even the money didn't matter to me at that point.
It's not fun if you actually care about the project, but
Yeah.
if it's just a job, then I I couldn't care less.
Oh, okay. Another question here from Joshua, and this one is Sven. How do you feel? Do you feel that editors have a certain style, like directors?
Um, I actually don't think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think a really great editor has a style. I think the style comes with the film, and he's just able to pick up what that style is that best fits that story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Here,
I do think, though, there are a lot of editors who are not storytellers, and that's something that you should watch out for. See if that editor, if he's a technician and it's all about just the computer and the software and the highest resolution, or is he like a painter? Is it all about the beauty of the image? Or is he a musician and it's all about the flow of the music, the score, and everything? Or is he really a storyteller? Because ultimately, I think that's the one you want.
mm-hmm. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, I know in your YouTube channel you talk about a lot of different techniques, I guess, of how to best, but what's the best way to, I guess, to tell a story.
Yeah.
So maybe my question would be then for you, like, have you ever changed maybe actually like drastically or maybe a little bit, but actually changed the story in a film just by editing it?
Yes.
You have? Okay, so if you've and when that happens, is that something that you would like decide on your own and then you just show it to the director, or is it usually you kind of do it with I guess along with the director and kind of thing, or do you just do it, show it to them, and they either love it or hate it?
Usually, it's an instinctual choice that I do without really trying to communicate it. I'd like to try something, show it, pitch it, and see if they run with it.
Okay.
And yeah, many times as an editor, I will have just by default will have a opposite opinion about a scene. Like I feel like okay, a scene was shot a certain way to do a certain to tell the story in a certain way. Most of the time, that makes it very predictable because you set it up in a way to get a certain result. And if you're not 100% correct or artistically perfect in the way that you set it up, the audience will know exactly what's up.
Mm-hmm.
And by taking a scene like that and then immediately saying, what would happen if actually the outcome should be the opposite? And let's cut it that way. You immediately put some surprise in there and make it interesting
Mm-hmm.
um, for the audience because they're expecting one way and they're getting something else. And so many times I'm like, is that really the way that this should play out? And many times I'm like, maybe there's a way we can do that differently. and that's what makes it then interesting.
Have you ever then done, like, let's say one of those re-edits, or like done one of those things that are, you're saying, less expected, and then you show it to the director of the film, and then they're, I don't know, maybe they see it and they completely hate it, and if so, how then do you resolve that? Like, do you just totally step back and you just say whatever the director, or would you still try to push? I guess, you know, if you really believe that your idea works, would you still try to push for your idea to somehow make it into the final film?
Um, I probably wouldn't, especially if the director is very strongly about the way that he wants it done. I just see the opportunity to pitch him a new idea,
Okay.
a new point of view, and if for some reason that doesn't gel with him, then that's all I can do. I can just say, I think this is a better way, but it's your film and it's your story, and ultimately you are the one that has to live with it. And so let's do it your way.
Okay.
And to give you an example, the previous film with Mark, there's a scene, and his wife, Teresa Palmer, actually co-wrote the script. And she has a monologue in the film where she's talking about her experience with her mother, and there's some drug issues. And the way it was written and shot, I immediately thought, wow, let's just flip all the lines. Let's completely take that monologue apart and make it completely different. And then I cut the scene that way. Mark loved it, and then we show it to Teresa, and she didn't like it at all. And she's like, "Well, this is really how I feel in that scene. I wrote that scene exactly the way because that's a relationship I have with my mom, and that's how that came."
Oh,
And
okay.
then I said, "Okay, I completely understand, completely get it. Let me cut it exactly the way that it was written," and that's how it ended up being in the movie. And that's totally fine. I mean, there's something to be said to try something and then say, you know what, we tried and let's move on. And I think that's better than pre-anticipating anything.
Okay. Okay. Oh, it's interesting. So like actually overall then like when you approach editing, because like for example I watched one of your tutorials where you have a scene with Mark Webber. Mark's character walks into the room and I think he's talking to his actual mother, and you were saying something about, I guess his mother didn't have as much of an experience as an actress and kind of felt a little flat maybe about certain of her deliveries. And I loved how you in there actually kind of changed the order of who says what and what time. And yet, in that case, I don't think it really changed the meaning of the story. It kind of changed their performances slightly. I think it made them look better.
Yeah.
And so I found it very interesting how you did that. But like, for example, when you work on projects, then do you ever like do you whenever you look at like let's say an actor's performance, and do you just kind of take it upon yourself as an editor and you kind of go, okay, I don't like this performance, and if that's the case, are you automatically gonna try to edit it, re-edit it around, and I guess you could say change their performance?
Yes, that's my
Yeah.
job as an editor. Is I look at a performance and I'm trying to see how can I mold it in a way that it really fits the character of the story. How can I shape it towards conflict? Um, and so yeah, I do that all the time. And some of the greatest actors are totally aware of that, and they will deliver you all these options. They will completely like break a scene to reset and do a new version of what they just did, or they fall apart in the middle, but they give you these moments of brilliance, and you just
Okay.
your job as an editor is just to pick them and figure out a way how you can puzzle them together to make sense out of them. And
Okay.
I love that part.
So in a way, I guess you prefer then a lot of different takes, a lot of different versions, then, so you have kind of more options to choose from.
Yes, I prefer an actor who can be brilliant every once in a while over a consistent actor who's an 8. I'd rather have somebody who's an 11 3 or 4 times, but then he's a complete dud in between.
Alright, okay. So have you, like, for example, have you ever then changed an actor's performance like drastically like that? Hopefully for the better, but then let's say you had, like, have you ever had the actual actor give you their feedback after they've seen it, like whether positive or negative?
Except for Mark, not really. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Mark has the opportunity to see his performance and then either say, "Man, I thought I completely sucked that day, and somehow this seems to work," or it's like maybe this, I don't know, I thought there is more there. but most of the time as an editor, you don't get that feedback. You don't have that direct line of communication with the actors. You sort of just do your job, and then if it works, the credit goes to the actors.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And if it doesn't work, then they get punished.
So in a way, as an editor, I guess I should tell you guys that you have a lot of control over the way that the actors, I guess, are portrayed, right? So yeah, it definitely is interesting. So overall, then, when you approach editing, do you kind of like, let's say on a narrative, I guess, story, kind of a traditional film, would you look at like the script? Okay, this is how the script was written, or maybe even storyboards or shot lists, or talk to a director first, like of kind of to see what the order is of how the scene should play out, or do you just like to kind of look at the footage and have no outside, I would say, or prior kind of input, and just kind of see what you can put together with those pieces they have there?
I would say most of the time I'd rather not have outside input. If there's a really solid script and the way it was shot, I will definitely look at the script. I will have the script in the system, and I can match all the shots to the script to see what the original intent is. Um, but most of the time, I that's all I want. I don't really need to hear anything else because I only have this one opportunity to be impartial, and after that, I'm either too close to the footage or people have given me so much feedback that I lose my own point of view a little bit. Um, but every once in a while, there will be a moment where I'm like sending an email to the director as he's shooting or whatever. I'm like, hey, I noticed this. What does that mean? How do you see this? How should I play this character? Um, do you want, for example, there's a scene with Mark and a very close relative, and it's not quite clear how his opinion about that relative is. And it's very important for the story. So I ask him, do you feel like you have this relationship with this character, or do you feel like you have that relationship? Because we have this opportunity to spin the story either way, and then I'll wait for his feedback. And then sometimes he won't give me. He like, you do what you think is best.
Oh, okay. Oh, Mark seems like very laid back then.
Yeah, he is. He's very open. I mean,
Okay.
he gets very detailed as we move on in the process. But at the beginning, he's extremely open,
Hmm.
and then he makes his choices.
Okay. Um, Actually, you know what? Here, let me see here what other questions we have from the audience. One person, Joshua, asks, Sven, what is the best cinematographer you've worked with?
Oh man, I really like Patrice Crochet, who shot this movie, and we've done so many movies together. So he is
When you
great.
say this movie, you mean Flesh and Blood with Mark Webber?
Yes,
Okay.
Flash and we went to film school together, so we've given each other jobs throughout our career where one got the job and then said, hey, you should look at this editor, or hey, you should look at this DP. Um,
Actually,
so
do you mind if I ask you what was that film Flesh and Blood shot on? 'Cause you were mentioning one of the videos that it was shot on RAW, right? You're shooting in RAW, but
it was shot on the Black Magic. What is it, the Ursa?
Ursa? Okay.
Yeah, and it's the new 4K,
Four
and then
or 4.6?
4.6,
Oh,
4.6, yeah.
okay.
And then the B camera was actually the 2K.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see what another question here from Ashton. Sven, what is the relationship like between you and the composer of projects? I'm guessing like the music composer. I think that's what.
Yes. Well, we'll have Daniel Ahern on this one, so he's more of a musician, but he'll do score as well. It's really great because he's extremely open, and I can shoot him a scene and he'll work on it, or he'll just send me a bunch of tracks and says, "Hey, use anything you like," and then I can ask, "Hey, can we change this up a little bit because I need a little something here," and he'll adjust. So just a great experience. On the previous movie he worked, and Moby was involved as well, and Moby was also
Oh,
incredible. I mean, Moby didn't have much time, but he was completely open to any piece of music that he's ever created, published, non-published, we had access to,
wow.
and could use in the film. And
Well,
so,
it's
yeah,
nice. It's nice when somebody gives you that kind of freedom, though.
yeah, no, it's incredible. But he just has that mindset that sharing is caring. So,
Cool.
uh,
Actually, I have a question for you too. Do you ever feel like let's say you're in the middle of a scene or just like a maybe like a short project, and you're so involved in it that you kind of feel like you need to step back from it, maybe work like on something else or whatever, just to kind of get a, I would say, fresh perspective. And I guess the reason why I'm asking is because I know for myself, like sometimes I've gotten into like certain scenes even like they're so complicated, and I try different things, and then it seems like after a while, it seems like whatever I try, it seems like they all of the different approaches work, and then I kind of have to like literally put it away, work on something, maybe come back after a day or two, because then I tend to see everything fresh, and it doesn't, and then I realize, okay, this doesn't look that good. Whereas when you see it over and over, it kind of tends to just look, I guess, okay. Do you ever do that too when you work?
totally. I might even take that to another level in the sense that I will cut a scene, a rough cut, and
Mm-hmm.
then I won't touch it for uh, till I get to the polished part. So I cut all my scenes and I just cut them and I'm done with it.
Oh, okay. You
And
mean like you don't look back on them?
I don't look back on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just line the whole movie up and I start watching the movie and then things start to just click in my brain where I'm like, okay, so the scene doesn't need to be this long, or the scene needs to be about this part only. It doesn't need to be about this part because we're already touching on it. So there's a lot of like detailed decisions that I ignore early on in the process, and as the movie then gets built together, I will start making these decisions later on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so most of the time, I don't even get to a point where I'm really like stuck in a scene because I there's one way that I want to cut it, I cut it, and then I just walk away from it, and I
Mm-hmm.
look at it then weeks later, and then see if it actually works out or not.
So when you're working, for example, like with somebody like Mark on that film, which seems like a lot of that film was shot kind of improvisational, improv kind of style, right?
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you then edit and kind of tend to go through as much as you can, or like the whole film, and then you just watch each scene, or like watch, I guess, the whole film with Mark, or do you just kind of work per scene?
I work per scene. We usually meet once a week where whatever I've achieved in that week, it's usually like 10 minutes, so maybe like three scenes. Um, and I'll play those scenes with him. And at this point, he really doesn't give any feedback. He's like, "Oh, this is amazing. See you next week." Um, and
Okay.
he's saying that not because he thinks this is amazing. He just doesn't want to start the process of taking things apart
Oh,
until we
okay.
finish this part of the process. So he'll take all this in, and then now I'm actually feeding him the entire movie. So every time I eat, add three more scenes, and we're done with this process now. Now there's a 2 hour version of this movie, and I just upload it, and he can see it, and he watches it as a movie, and then just decides how he feels on it. Right now he's out of the country. He'll be back in a week, and then we'll start making some of the big strategic decisions on just how do we get to 85 minutes and what are the important things that we need to keep and what are the things that can go. And then we start refining.
Okay. You know what? So let's try to wrap up because it's been an hour already. So maybe quick answers if you can. If not, then we'll just move on. So a quick question, Aniki82. How do you get to meet directors to work with? Is it mostly through post production company that call you?
It's either your work that's out there or it's somebody you've worked with who is referring you. Very little comes through cold calls or ads or any other avenue than just some form of personal connection.
Okay, another question from Carson Schwarm. I find German, French, or Italian screenwriting is different than American. Would that reflect your editing approach?
I don't know. Probably not, because I'm not a German filmmaker. I mean, I learned the craft here. I always loved American movies. So I feel more influenced by American storytelling than any European. I mean, I do have a European sensibility in a way, but I always try to do the American version of that, which to me means like interesting and has an audience appeal beyond just art house audience, which may be a little arrogant. But I feel like American films are made for the world, and European films are made for a specific part of the world.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a valid point. All right, next question is from Joshua. How do you feel about winning 2 awards?
Um,
Is
I
it a maybe you can actually explain like what awards is it that you won that
what
he's referring to?
I won my first film won a film festival in Rhode Island.
Okay.
And then I won an editing award in a New York Film Festival.
I guess are awards important to you?
They're important in the sense that I can use them to get my next job or to have some form of credibility. But beyond that, I mean, I'd love to win the Oscar. That's my lifetime goal. But that's about it.
Uh-huh. Okay. So maybe you know what? Maybe I can ask you actually like the last question. You could say any like overall, or maybe 2 questions. What are maybe like the key things to watch out for when editing films? Like maybe like as an advice that you could give others.
Develop a sensibility for character and story, and don't get too obsessed about anything else in terms of technical stuff or aesthetics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the next question, then the last question will be any just overall, I guess, business or creative advice that you can give to young filmmakers. Maybe you want to become, I guess, filmmakers in general, or specifically want to become film editors.
Uh, yes. Well, if you are, there are various ways how you can get into the business. One way would be to become an assistant, let's say an assistant editor. When you end up being an assistant editor and you really just see that as a way to become an editor, don't settle for just doing your job, because the assistant editor's job is very technical and people hire you to solve a technical problem, but you have the opportunity to work with editors who come from a creative background and be that assistant that can help them or is eager to learn creative storytelling, because you will come across editors who are open to that and will give you opportunities to cut stories and eventually move up. And most assistant editors that I've experienced say they want to become an editor, but they don't do what needs to be done to become an editor, which is start cutting scenes. And when you get that opportunity, embrace it, or even cut scenes before they even ask you, so you can show them something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess the best way to impress anybody, I guess, and get work is to actually show them what you can do, right? So. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, for taking in the time out of your busy schedule, answering all these questions. I know there's actually a bunch more questions, but I would just say since we are actually running over 1 hour, guys, just go join. Basically, look up Sven. I mean, there's links I provided in the description of this video, plus, like I said, the annotations to his YouTube channel, which is This Guy Edits. Contact, also he's got information there about I guess people can contact you on Facebook, Twitter, right? I
Yeah,
think you say you have Instagram too.
yes. But yeah, if you have any questions, just go either on the channel or the Facebook group, This Guy Edits. Post your question in the comment section, and as you can see when you read some of the comments, I tend to respond to every question. And I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Perfect. So yeah, there's because a lot of the questions I'm seeing right now, they're actually questions that will be perfectly answered if you actually watch some of Sven's videos on his YouTube channel. So I would just suggest just start watching from the first video, because he kind of takes you through the whole, like his editing process of the film he's working on right now with Mark Webber. So anyways, thank you, Sven. Thank you for joining us. And I guess maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe in the future we can still have you on, maybe after the film is done, or maybe when there's some other interesting project.
I would.
Also, the same thing. If you have anything, you know, anything else that you want to like, any announcement or anything you want to let my audience know, just tell me, and I'll post it on my Facebook, my Twitter. So kind of help spread the word. So thank you.
Sounds great. Tom, I want to thank you. I mean, I really love what you're about. I looked at your channel. I immediately saw that you're somebody who's doing things and is creating something, and that's something that I totally dig and support. So I'm so grateful that you contacted me and that I had the opportunity to come on.
Oh, thank you. Well, all right. So, anyways, that's it, guys. And like I said, to go check out Mark's, Sven's channel. A lot of cool stuff over there. All right. Bye.
Bye. Take care.